upscale. All aid agencies now are looking to upscale because that would be the priority at such a stage, and to continue the work that's going on.
Right, let's talk now to Paulo Pinheiro, who chairs the UN Syria Commission. It's been conducting an inquiry into war crimes in the country since the start of the civil war more than a decade ago. Mr. Pinheiro is a legal scholar from Brazil. He's also worked for the Organization of American States as a specialist on human rights. There's a call now for a comprehensive ceasefire to allow aid workers to access northern parts of the country, still affected by both the earthquake and the conflict. Mr. Pinheiro, it's good to speak to you again. I'm sorry it's in such circumstances. Let me ask you, first of all, we heard this morning, or at least there was a report from the Reuters news agency suggesting that one small relief operation provided by Egypt might be getting through over the next few hours into Syria. But presumably, with the best will in the world, one visit, it will be a drop in the ocean. Why isn't it possible, given that this is a natural disaster which has nothing to do with the conflict, for aid agencies not to just go straight into Syria?
I think the first aspect is that the Security Council decided to have one only cross-border to Syria. Then if there's one cross-border, you see problems, obstacles, then we are seeing this convoy in the third day of this disaster. And I think that's a demonstration to give humanitarian aid in countries without a war, in a country in a state of conflict after 12 years, demonstrates very clear that it's time to overcome all the political obstacles. Why only a convoy? Because of the political aspects of an ongoing conflict. I think that the earthquake reveals dramatically the need to begin urgently to build a ceasefire that is completely absent of all the radars of the member states at this moment.
In terms of the attitude of the Syrian authorities, a lot of countries won't deal with the Assad regime. They refuse to recognise any legitimacy of it because of the civil war and because of the way that those who initially protested were treated. But is there a danger that a kind of adherence to a position of principle can actually cause real humanitarian damage? I was talking an hour ago to a man who was one of those protesters, fled and is now living in New Zealand. And he said, look, if they're worried about corruption, if they're worried about the black market, better to send in aid, lose half of it, because half of it will get through.
Yes, I think it is a moment, and I'm very happy that Syria has activated the civil protection mechanism of the European Union. And 19 countries of the European Union decided to send some support during this crisis. I think that despite the economic sanctions that several countries have imposed, I think that is the moment that despite the sanctions, there is an obligation. There is a duty of countries giving humanitarian aid
Mr. Pinheiro,
for this terrible situation.
I'm going to ask you just to pause a moment while we say goodbye to our viewers on BBC Two. Let's continue with our audience on the BBC News channel, Mr. Pinheiro, because I think your point is a fascinating one. Is there any way that pressure could be applied? Is it a matter for the UN Security Council to now say, look, convene a meeting and say, actually, we effectively direct that because of this humanitarian crisis, because of the scale of it, some of those things will not apply for the period of trying to offer humanitarian relief?
I think this tragedy is a window of opportunity because you see the difficulty to give humanitarian assistance where 5 armies are operating. This is impossible. That is everything that I heard from the people there in Syria. It's very clear that if the war continues, if you have another tragedy, it will be the same problem. What we can do, that is, the Commission tries to invite member states that are present in this war or that influence this war to begin to work in a ceasefire. And I think the first step is that go over the sanctions and bring aid, bring support to the victims of this tragedy. And in your introduction, I had also that there is probable the second crisis if the survivors will not receive food, shelter to survive. That is the drama. It's a second drama.
Absolutely. This is the point that the World Health Organization has made. Now, I'll pause you again, Mr. Pinheiro, if you don't mind staying with us just a moment. I want to bring some pictures to our viewers at home of the town of Hatay, which I think I'm right in saying is in Turkey. These are pictures that are coming in live. They give you a sense. Look at that building just leaning. It's almost as if somebody it looks like a toy building, doesn't it? That a kid has knocked over in irritation and it's kind of leaning at an angle with the front has slid off and it looks like the whole thing could give way at any moment. And yet other buildings are intact. And what that points to is something that's happening in, we heard it from Paul Moss in the last hour, it's been happening on social media, a wave of anger and frustration that people thought they were promised, a whole process beginning with the earthquake of 1999. So far, more people died in that, but let's reserve judgment about whether this will sadly be a higher death toll, in which they talked about, I'm sorry, just grabbed by the impact of the immense power of that image. They talked about an earthquake tax. People paid it. It weighs billions of pounds or billions of dollars, however you want to convert it in lira, Turkish lira. It should have been used to retrofit buildings. It should have been used to invest in the emergency services and disaster relief for emergencies, because Turkey, as in Syria, as in other parts of that region, sit on fault lines, which mean that earthquakes are a real and present danger, not a yearly one, but a regular one. Mr. Pinheiro, you'll know from your part of the world how devastating these, I'm thinking about the Mexico earthquake, for instance, how devastating these events can be, how their impact can last for years afterwards. What's your reflection on the challenge that now faces Turkey and Syria to try to rebuild, or at least to start restoring some kind of normality to people in the coming months?
About Turkey, even I praise the solidarity of Turkey for so many, 3 million refugees in Syria. I can speak about Turkey. But on Syria, what I like to say that those photos that you are showing, these are the photos of Syria in war. That is what happened with the earthquake is what was happening during 11 years in Syria. This collapse of buildings, this impossibility of surviving in a city. Then I think that, of course, the notion of recovery from the disaster of the earthquake, I think the issue of recovery is something that member states must begin, because we have this a war has to finish. In a certain way, the war is concentrated precisely in one of the 3 places is the northwest of Syria, where you have the epicenter of the earthquake. And then I think that is a good moment to begin how we can stop this war and how we could begin creating conditions for the recovery after this terrible earthquake.
Paulo Pinheiro, chair of the UN Syria Commission, which has been running now for the whole life of this terrible, enervating conflict, more than a decade. Thank you very much for speaking to us on BBC News.
Thank you. Thank you very much.